So, you've decided to venture in to the world of D&D character creation, but find yourself curious as you're taking your first few steps into the unknown. It's a difficult path to navigate alone for the first time, but luckily you don't have to, because in this video I will be guiding you through the entire process of creating your very first character. Just to give you a bit of context, I'm Luxy and I played D&D for the very first time about a year ago now. And I've been completely hooked ever since. So I'm a relatively new experienced player, if you can call it that. And I still remember very well how it felt to be in your shoes. Before we begin, I have a couple of disclaimers first we gotta get through. First of all, for this video I'll be using a site called D&D Beyond, which I highly recommend for any new players out there. I still use it even as an experienced player. It has a great character creator which does a lot of the calculations automatically. You don't have to go in and do them yourself, which also makes it really easy to go back and tweak things if you change your mind later on or have to go back and change a few things. And it's completely free to make an account there and start using it. So highly recommended, and that's what we are going to be using in this video. And lastly, I won't be going too much into detail in this video on fleshing out your character from more of a roleplay and character development standpoint. This video is mainly a guide on the mechanical side of character creation, so understanding things like your class, skills, picking equipment, species, that sort of stuff. I think roleplay and character development deserves its own video. So yeah, cool. With that said, let's make a character. Alright, so I've just gone ahead and opened up D&D Beyond and signed into my account. And you just want to go on to your name, down to characters, and then hit create a character over here. And we want to select the standard because we want to create our own character. So the first page you'll be taken to when you make your character is your character preferences, or this settings tab called character preferences. You can also write your name here if you already have a character name, and even select a profile picture, but you can do that when you're finished with the character. The most important thing to do in this step is to reach out and ask your dungeon master or game master, the person that is going to be running the game you're going to be playing. Ask them about the settings, which ones they want you to use here. Where it's especially important is figuring out whether you're going to be playing the 2024, the new set of rules from 2024 this year, or the rules from 2014 Dungeons and Dragons. And there's still a lot of groups, I think still most groups play the 2014 rules. I think that's the one that has the most players, but I think you're gonna begin to see more people playing 2024 as well. So ask your dungeon master which one you're going to be playing. Because if you know that you're going to be playing the 2024 version, you could just go in and disable 2014 core rules and disable legacy, which will remove all the options so there's no confusion or you don't accidentally pick something from an older version. Sadly, there is no version the other way around. You can't disable the new rules as easily if you're making a 2014 character, which is a bit annoying, but that's just kind of how it is right now. So I'm going to be making a character, showcasing it on a 2014, so an older version first. And there are going to be a few steps that are a little bit different that I can show in terms of a 2024 character. But yeah, so I'm just gonna leave all these options the same for now. And let's move to the class. This is the class tab where you can see all of the different classes: Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. And here you can see if you have the all the boxes enabled, you will have a row called Core Rules and a row called 2014 Core Rules. So that's where you're going to already from the beginning. Pay attention to which version you're doing. Yeah, so there are 12 different classes. I'm gonna do a brief explanation using the 2024 version because it's the same classes, but they have a much better brief description of the class. It gives a much better idea than the older ones. So just for the explanation, I'm just gonna use these ones. So you can click on this little arrow, which pops up the class, and you can see here that Barbarian says, a fierce warrior of primal rage. Barbarians are mighty warriors who are powered by primal forces of the multiverse that manifest as a rage. So I think that gives a pretty good idea. It's you can see its primary ability is strength, so it's a strong warrior. They have this barbaric rage and powerful strikes and stuff like that. Then you have the Bard, which says it's an inspiring performer of music, dance, and magic. Bards are expert at inspiring others, soothing hurts, disheartening foes, and creating illusions. So this is your more charismatic. It's often a musician because you can actually pick an instrument, but I think they can also be used for as like an actor type character or another creative person. Then you have the cleric. It says, a miraculous priest of divine power. Clerics can reach out to the divine magic of the outer planes and channel it to bolster people and battle foes. So this is your more religious priest type character that draws and uses its magic empowered by some divine being like a god and has this devotion to it. They have a lot of supporting abilities like healing, being able to heal yourself and allies, and also powerful attacks. Then you have the Druid. It says, a nature priest of primal power. Druids call on the forces of nature, harnessing magic to heal, transform into animals, and wield elemental destruction. So this is your magic user with this nature theme. They can, like this says, transform, like take the shapes of different creatures and animals and fight in those forms. While also being able to cast spells, speak to animals, a lot of fun things that a lot of people tend to enjoy a lot. Then you have the Fighter, a master of all arms and armor. Fighters all share an unparalleled prowess with weapons and armor, and are well acquainted with death, both meeting it out and defying it. This is your more classic well-versed fighting character that can use a wide variety of different weapons and armor, so you can really customize this to whatever fighter you want to make. Then we have the Monk, a martial artist of supernatural focus. Monks focus their internal reservoirs of power to create extraordinary, even supernatural effects. So this is more it's a very unarmed, combat-focused character. So they fight with punches and almost like kung fu type abilities. They can deflect attacks, which is super cool. So yeah, a bit of a unique character at that. Then you have the Paladin, a devout warrior of sacred oaths. Paladins live on the front lines of the cosmic struggle, united by their oaths against the forces of annihilation. So this is your typical or very knightly character, someone who is like a fighter. In that sense, they can use a lot of weapons, have some heavy, metal armor, that type of stuff. But they also have this their attacks kind of enhanced by this divine magic. They can channel some really powerful attacks, can also heal allies. It's very versatile class that can do a bit of everything. Then you have the Ranger, a wandering warrior imbued with primal magic. Rangers are honed with deadly focus and harness primal powers to protect the world from the ravages of monsters and tyrants. So even with the symbol, it's typically a sort of archer type character that also has some magic. Got a little bit of that Legolas vibe to it, but it can also do melee combat, and they have a bit of both worlds in terms of the blend between martial combat with bows and weapons, but they also have this nature magic, so they can do a bit of both. Then you have the rogue, so a dexterous expert in stealth and subterfuge. Rogues have a knack for finding the solution to just about any problem, prioritizing subtle strikes over brute strength. This is your more nimble, sneaky, agile fighting character, you know, with knives, daggers, and they have a bit of that like scoundrel vibe to it, that edge. A lot of people really enjoy that as well. Then there is the sorcerer, a dazzling mage filled with innate magic. Sorcerers harness and channel the raw, roiling power of innate magic that is stamped into their very being. So this is a primary magic user that has gained their powers through their bloodline somehow. So they're born with this magic. It's not something they had to work for. So there's a bit of like that gifted, you know, protagonist vibe to this character class. Then there's the warlock, an occultist empowered by otherworldly pacts. Warlocks quest for knowledge that lies hidden in the fabric of the multiverse, piecing together arcane secrets to bolster their own power. So whereas the sorcerers were kind of born with their magic, warlocks are kind of the ones that cheated to get the magic. So they have some pact they made with some more powerful being, like a devil or a fiend type character. It can be a lot more other things than that. And that's where they got their power, trading something in exchange for it. I find it to spark a lot of different ideas for characters. Some interesting stories that come out of a class like this. And then finally, we have the wizard, a scholarly magic user of arcane power. Wizards cast spells of explosive fire, arcing lightning, subtle deception, and spectacular transformations. So this is like it says, it's a primary magic user, like the sorcerer who was born with the magic, the warlock who cheated to get the magic. Wizards are the one that put in the work, they studied for it, they have this first to read more, to understand more, learn more magical spells and such. Can also have a wide variety of different spells to choose from. So that's kind of the quick overview. Like I said, these descriptions for the 2024 version, the classes are the same, like you can see down here. The descriptions for the newer ones are just better, so I recommend, even though I read them out loud, you could sit and read about them yourself. And in terms of choosing your class, I would just recommend going with whatever one seems the most interesting to you. Which one speaks to you the most? Are you the most fascinated? Because that excitement, personal interest, and the joy you get out of that's gonna matter a lot more than which one is mechanically better or harder to learn or something like that don't really matter at all. What's most important is that you pick something that you're interested in and that you're gonna have fun playing, and I think those things come hand in hand, the interest and having fun playing it. So I'm gonna scroll down, start out with a 2014 version of a class, and I'm gonna pick the Ranger for this video because it has a bit of both magic, so I can show you how to pick spells and stuff, and it also has some of the types of features you will see in classes like the Rogue or Barbarian Fighter or something. More what we call martial classes with melee weapons and stuff. So When you've added your class, you'll be greeted with a page like this, and like you can see at the top, you can still change your name here. You can also go back to previous pages without losing any progress, so you can jump around all you want. We can see here our hit points or max hit points, which is calculated by a hit dice. So some people like to roll a dice to detect how much hit points they have, which is how much damage your character can take before they go unconscious. So it's a pretty important number, and in this case it's a D10, so I have a maximum of 10 hit points. So you can see how much hit points you have, but we'll talk about that a bit more later. Then you'll get some options for something called proficiencies. So you can see which different things that your class is proficient with. My ranger is proficient with light armor, meaning I can wear light armor. I can also wear medium armor, and I can also use shields. And can also see what type of weapons. So not all classes will be able to wield the same kinds of weapons and armor. Like wizards don't have proficiency with these types of armor. They have just use robes or something like that, and their magic to defend themselves. So yeah, we can see some of that information. Here we can see our saving throws, which is saving throws are something we make when we react to something being sent our way. So it's usually a lot of spells. If they're trying to an attack, like a fireball comes our way, we have to make a saving throw, in this case a dexterity, to kind of jump out of the way. So we can see which types of saving throws that our character is better at doing, which is in this case strength and dexterity. And then we have skills, where I get to choose, because I'm a ranger, I get 3 skills I can choose, and I can choose from this list of skills. So in D&D we have 18 different skills, which are connected to 6 different stats that we'll select later on. But basically what you need to know as like a new player is that skills are something we use when we are doing something called skill checks. And that's whenever something happens in the game where our character is trying to do something where it's no longer a guarantee that we will succeed at that thing. So whenever there is like a chance of failing, or that there is a real chance that you can fail this activity, like lifting something really heavy, like it's not guaranteed that you are capable of lifting. And the way we figure out whether you are or not is we usually grab what's called a D20, which is a 20-sided dice that looks like this. Where we grab a 20-sided dice, or a D20, and we roll that, and then add our skill number. So let's say it's the example where we're trying to lift a really heavy tree that has tumbled on some poor human being who's trapped underneath this tree. We come over and we say, I want to try and lift this thing up. Then the dungeon master would decide, hey, give me an athletics check. So then I would take my D20 dice and I would roll it. In this case I rolled a 9, and I would use the skill that's called athletics. If I'm extra good at athletics, I can add some extra numbers to this roll, making it more likely for me to actually be able to succeed and lift this big tree off and rescue this man. So hopefully that example makes sense. I'll touch upon that, try and touch upon that a bit more later on when we get to the character sheet. I'm just trying to give you a bit of context on what these skills mean. So it's different things, basically, different skills that your character is extra proficient in. How many you can choose is going to depend on which class you are, as well as which things you can choose from. So my list is dependent on what's decided for the ranger. This animal handling, athletics, insight, investigation, nature, perception, stealth, and survival. If you have the option to pick something like perception or stealth, those come up pretty often. It's sneaking around or spotting different things. So you can't really go wrong if by picking those. But other than that, just pick ones that for now would make sense for the type of character you're making, or what you find interesting if your character was good at this. So that could be athletics in this case, perception, and let's pick insight perhaps, like that our characters more skilled at reading people. That's kind of your skills and proficiencies. And then you have what's called class features that, again, they are completely unique to the different classes. So if you're not picking a ranger, you won't have this favorite enemy, natural explorer. You're gonna have something else. And the best thing to do here, just open it up, try and read and understand what the feature does, and as best as you can try to select whatever options you have to choose here. This is like a favorite enemy, so this is a feature that makes my character extra versatile or skilled at fighting or understanding a particular type of creature or enemy. So I get to choose what that enemy is. So again, you can never really go wrong by asking your dungeon master, like, hey, I don't really know which one to select. Do you have any recommendations or something like that, or your fellow players? There's not really a right decision here. Yeah. Now let me show you how to pick spells for those of you who are going to be playing magic users. So I actually can't use spells yet, so I'm gonna have to set my character to level 2, which you change levels and level up in this column right here. And that's where I get my spell casting. The way you pick your spells is in this section called spells at the top. Into this tab, and it will show you what spells you know. Currently I haven't selected any. I can open this column that shows all the spells I can add. And then I would firstly pay attention to, once again, what rules you're playing with, if it's the 2024 rules or 2014. I'm playing with, making a character for 2014. So I'm going to select 2014 current rules. That just makes sure that you don't get things confused. I get to pick 2 spells, and I get to choose them from this list right underneath. Again, just like the class features, there's not really much else to do other than going into these different spells, opening them up, trying to read what they do. So I would just recommend going in and reading about it. But if you want some directions in terms of what to look for in terms of spells, I would recommend having at least one spell that deals some sort of damage. In this example, because I know about the spells, none of these do damage except for Hunter's Mark, which says right here that I can choose a creature I can see within range and mystically mark it as your quarry. Until the spell ends, you deal an extra 1d6 damage to the target whenever you hit it with a weapon attack. So it allows me to deal more damage if I put this Hunter's Mark on an enemy and then begin shooting it with my bow or slashing it with my swords. It's gonna deal more damage if I use this spell. And you're gonna have some other options to choose from, but I recommend picking one that deals some sort of damage. In this case, I'm gonna pick Hunter's Mark. If you have the option to pick something that heals damage, like in this example, I have something called Cure Wounds. There's also a different spell called Healing Word, but I have Cure Wounds. If you have the option to select a healing spell, I would definitely recommend doing that also. So having at least one that deals damage, one that heals if you have the option, and then the rest, I think you should just go wild with whatever seems interesting. That's the fun of it. If you wanna have jump, being able to jump extremely high, or fog cloud, being able to put this massive cloud and blind all people inside, obscure vision, speak with animals. If you want to speak, be able to understand and talk to a squirrel or whatever animals you meet, go with speak with animals. That would be my guidance to you, or my advice. So that covers spells for now. Let's move on to the background. So basically what a background is not so much your character backstory. It's more of a particular or a set of experiences or something your character has experienced that has allowed them to earn extra skills or be proficient with a particular set of tools. And you'll see here, if we go in and select options, we'll get once again 2 sections here based on 2024 rules, which is the core rules, and the 2014. But there are these backgrounds called like criminal, spy. So picking criminal or spy will give me proficiency with something called the thieves tools, which is stuff you use for lock picking and picking locks. Will also give me skill proficiency in deception and stealth. So that's the same set of skills that we covered in the classes. This just gives you the ability to get even more skills in particular things, but also has this tied explanation to why your character is better at deception and stealth. Well, it's because they were a criminal, or maybe still are a criminal or a spy. They have this experience here that makes them extra proficient with a set of skills. And you also get to pick some other things like a gaming set, apparently. It's not like you don't get Nintendo DS or something like that, Nintendo Switch. So yeah, be mindful of which version, 2024 or 2014, which version you are playing of D&D. And then select one for your character of these pre-made ones. There's also folk hero, gives you proficiency in animal handling and survival. So yeah, this can also inspire some things about developing your character, figuring out who they are as a person, which is also a part of Dungeons and Dragons that you can lean into as much as you want or as little as you want. If you just wanted to play it like a video game, you can just go for the different stats, think about weapons and abilities and spells, but you also have that option to go into who is this character and developing that. But I won't be going into too much into that. And you can also see in this tab there are a bunch of other tabs you can fill out with alignment, faith. You can fill out the physical characteristics like what hair color, fill out a bunch of information if you want to in this character sheet. You don't have to, but that option is there to if you want it on your character sheet. Hopefully that explains backgrounds, an extra way to gain extra skills for your character while also thinking about why they are skilled at that. Moving on to species. So this is where you get to choose your race or your species of your character, which there are different ones because D&D is a fantasy game, so there are elves and dwarves and halflings, dragonborn. Once again, think about which version you are playing. We are making a 2014 version, which currently has more options if you just have a free account. So I got all of these options available. Again, I would talk to your dungeon master because they might have different preferences on which races, some extra details, like they might have created a world where tieflings, this race, tieflings, don't exist, or maybe orcs are all evil. So if you want to be a half orc, that's something you want to keep in mind and what you want to know about. So again, have that ongoing relationship with your dungeon master when you're creating characters. That's the best way to go about it. And even with if you have experienced players, talk to them about which races, which classes are they playing. Feel free to just ask about. But basically, species in D&D determine what your character looks like for the most part. But they also serve another purpose, which is special species features. So if we pick what's called a half-elf, which is like a half-elf, half-human, they're gonna have their own features, kind of like classes do, and traits. So for example, it says that we have something called dark vision, we have fey ancestry, and skill versatility. And then we can scroll down here, read about dark vision, allows us to see in the dark, which is pretty cool. So you get all these even skills. Once again, you gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choice, and languages. So it's some of these things that you see also come up when classes, also come up in backgrounds, and you get some more options depending on which species you are. You also get something called ability score increases, but that's what we're gonna touch on in a moment. I would also just recommend picking a species basically just from what you want your character to look like. Is it a dwarf, like with a big beard and big muscles, or is it like a half orc with, you know, green skin and these big sharp teeth and some rugged hair or something like that? And whatever picture you like of your own character, I would just pick that species mostly based off of that. So whatever one seems interesting here. I'm gonna pick a half orc in this scenario because I kind of like the idea of this hunter ranger type character being half orc. I think that's a cool picture in my head. And if I have to make any choices, it will pop up the same way that it does with the classes, and you just fill those things out. With half orc, I don't have any choices I need to make. It's all features that I can read about. So let's move on to the step that's called abilities. For each character, there are 6 different stats or attributes that kind of describe your character's strengths and weaknesses and where those lie. In D&D, those 6 stats are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Strength is when you imagine like a strong character, you imagine someone who would probably also be able to hit hard with certain types of weapons, like a big club or a big axe or a large sword or something like that. So from a more technical level, strength will determine your accuracy and your damage on what's called strength-based weapons. So that's clubs, it's hammers, it's maces, great axes, big axes. That determines your character's like physical strength, and also its kind of competence with those types of weapons. Then we have dexterity. A character that has high dexterity is more nimble, more agile, dexterous. It's someone who can dodge attacks. They are harder to hit in a way. They're also more effective with finesse weapons like knives or short swords, things that require more quick movement. And that's why on a technical level, dexterity controls something called your armor class, which is basically how difficult it is to hit you. So the higher your dexterity, the higher your armor class will be, and the harder it will be to hit you. At the same time, it also determines how good your character is at using these more dexterous weapons like short swords, daggers, bows. So the higher your dexterity is, the more likely you are to land attacks with those weapons, and the more damage you will deal with those types of weapons. And hopefully this will start to make sense in terms of the classes, where you can see, oh, a barbarian, if you're playing a barbarian that uses a great axe, they are raging, why they would want a higher level of strength, because they can then land attacks more often with their great axe and they deal more damage. The same with dexterity. For a character like a rogue that uses daggers or these more nimble weapons, they might not need to be very high in strength because they're not running around punching things or slamming with heavy weapons. For those kind of characters, it's more important for them to have a higher dexterity, because that's what's gonna make them more nimble, harder to hit, and easier for them to deal damage with their knives or bows and stuff like that. We also have the stat called constitution, which is sort of your character's bodily fortitude or resilience. It affects, first of all, your character's health, so how many hit points they have. The higher your constitution is, the more health you will have. And the second thing is it also affects something like how well your character takes something like being poisoned. So characters with higher constitution, they're more likely to not be as harmed by being poisoned. It's not about strength, it's not about dodging things, it's more about the physical fortitude or resilience. And then we have intelligence. Well, what is intelligence? Well, it's more of that kind of book smart, like many of the stats and attributes also affect the different skills. So intelligence, someone who's smarter would probably know more about history, would probably know more and remember more facts about religion, different gods in the world. And it also affects something like a wizard, which is the scholarly magic user. Their spells become more powerful the higher their intelligence is. So it's very determined on class. Wisdom is sort of like not so much the book smart intelligence, but more the lived experience, the insight, the perception, which are the skills that are controlled by wisdom. Characters that have higher wisdom will just have a naturally higher perception and higher insight. They're better at paying attention to the environment, reading people. The same with charisma. It's this presence, this more social stat. So characters with high charisma, they're going to be better at persuasion, which is a skill. Deception is a skill as well, and intimidation. All like social skills. So hopefully it makes sense that way, and you can see a pattern and how these things fit together. There's a few ways you can decide what stats your character has. You hit this generation method. That's something called standard array, manual rolled, where you kind of roll dice to figure out some stats, and there is something called point by. And once again, I would ask your DM or dungeon master, game master, I would ask them which method are we using here, or should I be using, because that's what determines everybody should be on the same kind of level and should use the same method, so it's fair for everybody. I'm going to be picking standard array. That is kind of the most simple way to figure out stats. So here we get the different stats: strength, dexterity, constitution. They're all at a 0 right now. And when we click this column, we have some numbers: 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. We get to distribute these 6 numbers to the different, the 6 stats, where the higher number will mean we are better at that thing. The lower number is the one we are the worst at. So we can just, if we wanted strength, we could put the 15 there. That means now we have strength is our strongest stat. What I would keep in mind is what class you're playing, because that is important. What I also tried to explain with the different stats is that each class is going to be highly affected by 1 or 2 of these stats. So for example, Ranger, when you're picking the different classes, Ranger states that dexterity and wisdom are the most important. Why is that? Well, dexterity is important for rangers because they are typically using bows. They're using more agile at ranged weapons, and ranged weapons get affected by dexterity. If you have a higher dexterity, you're gonna be more accurate with those weapons and deal more damage. That's why dexterity is there. Wisdom. Well, wisdom is there because if we go back to the class and we go to when we got our magic abilities, which is called spellcasting, if you scroll to the bottom, you will see that your spellcasting ability says wisdom is my spellcasting ability for the ranger spells. So that means that it uses the wisdom stat to determine things like how powerful my spells are, how accurate they are as well. So that's why it's dexterity and wisdom in the ranger's case. I'll try and put up a picture of all the different classes and which stats are the most important there. When I would be making a ranger in this case, I would probably put my highest score at dexterity because I'm going to be using something like a bow a lot. And then I would put my second highest at wisdom. So I'm also pretty good at my magic as well. If you were playing something like a wizard, well, they are intelligence based, so they use their intelligence when casting their spells. So in that case, it makes the most sense to have the highest number in intelligence. And the rest of the stats are more or less I would say up to you if you want your character to be extra strong, meaning they will also be better at athletics, lifting things. Constitution is also health. I would recommend probably not putting the lowest score in Constitution, because then you will not have a lot of health and it's a bit risky to go that way. So leaving that at least at a 10, I would probably not go below that. So that's the ability scores done. Moving on to the final step before you have a finished character sheet, which is your equipment and selecting your equipment. So once again, maybe it's a bit annoying at this point, it's just really important that you ask your dungeon master or game master what equipment is allowed or what equipment you can choose from, because it matters. They might be running one of my friends were playing a one-shot not too long ago where they were in a arena, and the whole idea was that they weren't supposed to start with any weapons. So in that case, you wouldn't select any equipment if you were playing that sort of game. So ask your dungeon master. In most circumstances, you want to select this choose equipment, and that would give you your class starting equipment, which in most cases would be what your dungeon master wanted you to choose. But you'd pick between these two options. So as a ranger, I can pick between scale mail armor and leather armor. You don't really have to think about which option is better. Again, think about which one is most interesting in terms of what you want to try out. Also here, I can pick between having 2 short swords or 2 simple melee weapons. And if I select the other option, I'll get 2 of these boxes where I can pick between a range of different weapons, like a hand axe, a javelin is kind of like a spear thing, mace. Choose these more niche options as well, which I actually did for my first ranger. The only thing you might want to keep in mind if you want to choose this option is that some of these weapons that you can pick from are going to be strength based, like I talked about before, like the great club, the hammer and the mace. They're going to be using your strength stat. So if you don't have a very high strength stat, you probably don't want to pick those weapons. And some of them are going to be dexterity, like your daggers, spears, I think as well. Then I get an option between a Dungeoneer's pack and an Explorer's pack. I don't think these matter too much. You can click on them to read what kind of items you get. It's more of just some extra bits and pieces you might be able to use in the game, but I don't think there's too much of a difference between selecting the Dungeoneer's or Explorer's pack. I also get a longbow and 20 arrows, so that's again for my ranger, and I also get a set of artisan tools I can pick from. I haven't really used these tools, to be honest. For the most part, it's thieves' tools that are the most utilized, I find. So once you've made those choices, you just hit add starting equipment. And then what I would do is, just after you've added it, just make sure that you click this use button and wield on your weapons, which will allow you to make sure that you're wearing the armor you selected and you can actually use your weapons. So the final step is just to press this what's next button and press view character sheet. So let's do that and check out what it looks like. Here we have our first completed D&D character sheet, which looks like this for every D&D character. It might be a bunch of information at once, but you can see here some of this is very familiar in the sense that you have your main stats up here that we selected: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And we have this little number underneath, which is a +2, -1. And that's something we use if we have to make a dice roll using one of these stats or something like that. Then over here to the right, we have our hit points. You can see I have 20 right now. And this is where you would paste in when you lose hit points, an attack hits you. You would type it in this column. Let's say I took 6 damage, and it would automatically, when you click this damage, it would calculate that. Let's say I took 6 healing, someone healed me for 6 damage, I would go back up to 20. And then here in this middle column, that's all the 18 different skills I was talking about earlier. So here you can see the list of all the skills, and you can see what number you get to either add or subtract. You see some of them have a -1 here. So I'd actually take one, I would roll the dice and I would subtract 1. You get an even lower number when I was rolling for those skills. And then we have the initiative modifier, which is something you use when you begin combat. It's basically a way to decide who goes first in the different turns. And then next to it, you have your armor class. And armor class is the one I was talked about a bit earlier as well, which influences how difficult it is to hit you. So the higher this number is, the better. And we can even click on these. We can see if you're interested in how these numbers actually get calculated or end up as a 16. We can see I get 14 of my armor class comes from the armor I'm wearing, which is, I picked that scale mail. So I get a 14 armor class from that. But then I also get a +2 from the dexterity stat. So I'm a generally harder to hit target than someone who had a much lower dexterity. So that's most of the general stats and numbers. You also have some of the actions that you can see here, which is some of the things you can do in combat, where I can see my different weapons. For example, I have a longbow here. You can also see your spells here in this tab next to it, if you have any. And here you can see the 2 spells that I picked when creating my character. I can click on the name and read what the spell does, which is really useful to do. I also want to show you how to customize it a little bit. And you can do that by hitting manage up here at the top, where you can change your name, but you can also click change sheet appearance. I like putting it on what's called Underdark mode, which just darkens it. And you also have a bunch of different backdrops for the different classes, make your character sheet look more customized. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that that's something I find fun, customizing. That's something you can do, make it look the way you want it to. Okay. I know this was a lot of information packed into one video. If there's still some things you're unsure about, please don't be afraid to ask your dungeon master or your game master or any other more experienced players you will be playing with. Chances are they'll be more than willing to help you out. And if they won't, well, you might have to reconsider playing with them. Thank you for coming along. I hope this helped demystify character creation for you all. And if it did, I would highly appreciate you hitting the like button on the video. Have a great rest of your day or night, and good luck with your adventures.